High in the mountains of Peru, 3,600 meters in the sky, there is a restaurant. Where the air is so thin, some people literally need oxygen tanks, the environment is meditative, and the food is unexpected. This is the highest fine dining restaurant in the world, and the experience is incredibly unique. It combines world-class gastronomy with a deep understanding of culture and people, and it was started by the #1 chef in the world. We're not only going to try this stunning meal, but we're also going to go behind the scenes to learn more about the culture, ingredients, and rituals from the Andean people themselves. This is Meal, and get ready because we're in for a wild ride. Peru is a country with such a rich culture and biodiversity. It's one of the only countries with thousands of miles of beautiful coastlines, a deep Amazonian rainforest, and the heights of one of the most impressive mountain ranges on the planet. But there is one man who is trying to tell the story of Peru to the world through food. Virgilio Martinez is the chef behind the world's #1 restaurant in 2023, Central. That restaurant takes you on a journey through Peru's geography, with each course representing a different ecosystem. But one of the most important ecosystems in Peru is the Andean Mountains. So in 2018, he did the unthinkable. He opened a fine dining restaurant in the middle of nowhere called Mil. It takes an hour and a half to get there from the nearest city. It's at an elevation of 3,600 meters above sea level, and the goal is to showcase what makes the Andes so special.
Mil is describing what is happening in one ecosystem. This magical place, the Cordillera de los Andes, on top of the Sapir Valley, where you get to see the terraces of Moray. But we're mainly serving things that are coming from Andean communities that work there, work in Cusco, and work in the Cordillera de los Andes.
One of the most unique things about being in this place is the altitude. So when I arrived, I wasn't sure how I was going to react.
We have just arrived at the Sacred Valley. We're about 10,000 feet in the air. You definitely are working harder. Your body is working harder. When we were even just walking up the stairs coming here, you're a little bit out of breath almost. Tomorrow, we're going to explore a little bit. We obviously have some immersions that we're going to be doing, and we obviously are going to be visiting the restaurant that is up here, Mil.
The next morning, we were up bright and early, and Virgilio himself drove up to Mil with us. But before we met again for lunch, we first had a super special experience lined up to learn more about the people and culture of the Andes, organized by Mil. This is the Warmi Path Immersion. Warmi is a group of 16 indigenous women that have culturally significant skills for Andean communities. Things like caring for animals, weaving textiles, and working the land. And our experience started by exploring the town and visiting one of the Warmi women's homes.
Ahora estamos esperando las Warmis acá. Podemos pasar, amiga. Bienvenido lo que han llegado acá en mi casa.
It's fascinating how they coexist with animals right in, I guess, their living room. And since textiles are such an important craft for their community, they started off by showing us how they prepare the wool. First, they cut the wool, and I was surprised by how they did this.
And is this just like a piece of glass?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Mira.
Ah.
Sí. Yeah.
There we go.
They have a technique.
Then they actually spin the wool using this tool called a pushka, which is a lot harder than it looks. But literally, you will see this later, these women do it almost by instinct.
Whoa, this is very advanced technique.
And you let go little by little.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh. Wow.
Afterwards, they take that wool and dye it using natural colorings from plants around their area.
Mira, este planta Marco ya hervido media hora ya.
But before we could actually put the wool in, we had to do one thing.
Ahora podemos pasar con ese planta de capulí para que no te pasen.
Yes, Espíritu Santo, viento, guaira, pase, aquella guaira, macho guaira.
And when you put the plant in the fire, it actually starts crackling, meaning that the bad energy is being burned. Then we go ahead and dye the spun wool in the boiling pot, and you get all of these beautiful colors that will be used a little bit later. we're about to embark on a little adventure with the Warmies. We started off at the restaurant meal. Then we passed by Morai, the archaeological site, and arrived at the community where we met with the Warmi women and learned how they dyed and spun their wool. We're now going to go up the mountain, passing by local flora until we arrive at Chuño Masa da Pampa, where we'll have a little break. Then we'll continue on, passing by their farmlands and arriving at the top of the mountain, a beautiful viewpoint where we'll see how these women craft their intricate textiles. So we packed up the donkey, were joined by all of the sheep, and we started our ascent up the mountain. The Warmies carry all of their gear inside of a beautiful cloth that they created themselves, and they just wrap everything up and tie it onto their backs. And when I said that spinning wool was second nature to them, I meant it. Literally, they were just walking up this mountain spinning wool. And as we ascended up the mountain, you really got a sense of just how special this place is.
Ponemos en ese pampa, por eso chuño más en la pampa, nosotros hacemos chuño en ese pampa con helada, entonces 3 noches, 3 días tiene que coger helada nuestro papa para pisar el chuño, entonces hacemos montonaditos la papa, entonces eso pisamos sacando nuestro zapato, el ojota, lo que decimos, eso bailamos así en el chuño. Sacamos todo esto, su cáscara, eso se llama chuño, por eso se llama este pampa, chuño masana pampa.
And we even got to try a snack that they made with the chuño.
It's delicious.
But before we continued on our way, they showed us one more of their rituals for the apus, or the protective spirits of these mountains.
Siempre nosotros pedimos a los apus amigos para que sea este año buen año, que sea lluvia y buena producción. A nosotros también nos da fuerza para ir hasta otro descanso. Pedimos siempre a los apus. Apo añermanca, apo coreera china, apo lampirario, apo lancarcoche.
As we continued onwards to our last stop, the Warmies stopped to show us different plants that they use for both dyes and drinks.
Esta chilca también nosotros hacemos tenido, cogen este color verde.
And when we finally reached the top, we had a special surprise waiting for us. We all put our stuff down and they poured everyone some chicha that they had made, which is a really special drink in Andean culture because it's used in rituals to honor the gods.
Apo patapojro. Y ahora Apo Yanawarancia. Ahora vamos a tener Pachatierra, Pachamama.
We'll learn more about this drink later, but what I love about this culture is just how connected they all are to Pachamama, or Mother Earth, to the Apus, and to their land in general. And how even though the work is hard and the conditions up here can be tough, they seem happy. They're an extremely tight-knit community that clearly knows and nurtures this land. And it was truly an honor to be able to learn about this firsthand.
That's great. I could do this all the time. There's only one more thing to do after this. That's to try the food.
But we were absolutely not leaving without seeing them actually craft their textiles. This is the reason that they are Warmi. Their expertise in textiles, using those as narratives of culture and maps of a territory, is spectacular. And when you see them working the loom, you really start to appreciate just how much goes into every single piece. A single table runner can take weeks to create, and there's no better way to learn how difficult the job is than to do it myself.
Wow, it is so strong.
Ya está, ya aprendiste.
Okay.
Good job.
The reason Meal offers these immersions is because Virgilio and the team believe that people should come away from this experience with a better picture and understanding of the true, authentic Peru. And if they're able to work with indigenous communities to share their stories and their culture, then it's one way to help them preserve that culture for the future. And the coolest part is, I actually got to take a few pieces of Warmi home with me. The pushka, which is now one of the coolest items that I own, these coasters that were actually made by that same community out of corn husks, and this little canvas bag, which I got to dye myself with the help of the women.
Bonita, bonita.
Bonita.
¿Te gusta?
Sí.
Now we're about to go see how all of this comes together in the dining experience that is meal. But these videos take a lot of work. I'm fortunate to be able to tell these stories, but if you want to see more of the most amazing food, people, and stories around the world, make sure to subscribe below, because when we hit 1 million subscribers, one of you will come with me on a dining experience just like this. All right, let's have lunch. Meal is set in this beautiful building that has displays all around featuring the different ingredients you'll find in the Andes. The dining room is small, with only a few tables available every single day. But to start the meal, we got a visit from Virgilio.
You want to experience these high elevations ecosystems. All the dishes are coming from these areas. You want to try this part of the mountain, this part of the Sacred Valley. We're going to go through different elevations in this region, in Cusco.
The table displays were beautiful, but even right off the bat, the environment felt unlike any restaurant I've ever been to.
So we just finished up the immersions in the morning, and we're in this like almost meditative space. It's super quiet, very reflective of the area that we're in, just slowing down, taking everything in, being present, and it's gonna be quite the experience.
The first course comes out, and immediately you can feel that it's a Virgilio type of restaurant. The presentation, the amount of dishes, it's reminiscent of Central's philosophy to say the least, and if you haven't seen my video on Central, go watch it to find out.
Have you ever heard about chuño en moraya before? Looks like a stone. We use only the starch to make this dough that you can see on the top. The idea is to eat together with this cream. It's a uchucuta. We find 3 tomatoes. Over there, we find like a bread. We prepare with coca leaf, and oca is a tuber.
It's really amazing how connected all of this is. So we went on those immersions in the morning, and we got to see some of the products that the communities here make. They do 2 different preparations of preservation of different potatoes. This one is so acidic, so citric. It's just so tasty. Like there's just no other way to say it. It's just so delicious.
Now, at this point, we've heard of chuño twice, but luckily for us, Meal actually offers a second immersion focused on learning about the ingredients and techniques used in this particular area, also led by an indigenous Andean person.
Entonces, en el mes de mayo cosechamos, en el mes de junio, julio hacemos este proceso, moraya y chuño, porque ese mes es tiempo de helada, con esa helada hacemos este proceso.
This process of freeze-drying potatoes naturally to preserve them is crucial, but they also have a couple other tubers that we'll see later in the menu that are actually used in sweet preparations.
Estos productos utilizamos como fruta. Utilizamos como fruta porque sacamos de la tierra, escarbamos y hacemos solear unos 7-8 días y lo cocinamos dulce. Acá en el campo más que todo utilizamos para los niños este producto. Los niños que recién están aprendiendo a comer, para ellos. Los señores mayores ya se está sufriendo con la dentadura. Para ellos es muy agradable oca y mashua.
The second course takes us to the highlands, a place that, at over 3,800 meters above sea level, seems unsuitable for life. We have a cured lamb dish, a dish featuring kushuro or little balls of algae that look like boba, a collection of greens from their surroundings, and a cream made from cherimoya. But the next course features an ingredient that might be surprising outside of the Andes, but is pretty common here.
We're serving alpaca. I know it's normal in Peru to serve alpaca, mostly in parts of the Andes, but we're doing quite a unique preparation because we're using big diversity of quinoas.
It's like really nice and soft. Texturally, it's just beautiful. And this sauce, a little bit sweet, but also quite umami. It's a really nice balance.
Each dish seems to highlight particular ingredients that are important here in the Andes, but this next one might just be one of the most important: corn.
Here we have corn diversity. In front of you, we have a cream made of the corn. We have a jura butter. We have a cheese with a cover of corn. Different crisps made also with this variety of corn. You first start with the cheese, then you take the crisps and you combine them with the jura butter, and for finishing, the cream in front of you.
So the corn here is also used for chicha, which we drank on the top of the mountain, but we got to learn a little bit more about this special drink with Virgilio.
Eso es lo que tomas cuando vas a la granja, ¿no? A la chacra.
Sí.
So they've been doing this recipe for years and years, and it hasn't been changed. So every time before drinking the chicha, you have to say thanks, you know?
Gracias Pachamama, me ha dado las plantas, me ha dado plantas medicinales, productos. Gracias Pachamama. Nosotros quedamos muy agradecidos a la Pachamama. Apo Pumahuanca, Apo Chicón, Apo ayuairo. Apo yana orco. Ahora sí. Salud.
Salud. Salud.
There are just so many rituals and traditions passed down from generation to generation, and the respect that they have for the land truly makes them connected to the earth. And speaking of traditions, the next course on the menu allows us to get a little look at one of the most famous Andean ways of cooking.
Here you have something called uchucuta. Here you have different varieties of vegetable roots, ocas, and mushrooms. This is the harvest of potatoes. So when we celebrate the harvest, people actually cook these potatoes underground. It's called watio. We're using the same soil, same place where we harvest the potatoes is gonna be the same place where we cook the potatoes. We're just not using potatoes, also mashuas, ocas, purple potatoes, white potatoes.
The condiment is a little bit spicy, but then it's such a creamy texture of potato and a little bit sweet as well. It's such a unique way of cooking. You get such an interesting texture, and that flavor of smoke just kind of permeates through it gently. Oh.
Now for our last savory course, we finished with this gorgeous preparation of duck, mushrooms, and avocados. A lot of things that I didn't think would grow at this altitude, but it just shows the diversity of the Andean ecosystem. And the thing that really makes this restaurant unique compared to any other restaurant in the world really is the altitude.
You get the feeling that, there's a lack of oxygen, and then you start to see how things start to grow, Things are happening quite slow. And then you start to sense the wind. Then you start to see all these vegetable roots, how things are not just growing up, you go underground. How you are able to understand, your relationship with the Pachamama, Mother Earth, how much you are able to cook with the soil, it's amazing.
As we headed into desserts, I was surprised by how many colors and flowers there were at this altitude, like in this dish that features coye, which we've seen not only here, but also back in Lima as the name of Pia Leon's restaurant, muña, and some of those tubers that we saw earlier. The team here takes great pride in teaching guests about the local flora in the meal immersion. They take you on this walk around the property where they'll just start picking tons of different plants, telling you about what they are and how they're used in their culture.
This is like one of the strongest, most fragrant plants that I've ever smelled.
Oof. And they even showed us how they scare away wild foxes.
Utilizamos así para ahuyentar los zorros, para ahuyentar los cóndores. Así.
Goodness.
But it wouldn't be a Virgilio restaurant without some variation of their famous final dessert.
So if you've already watched the other video, you'll know that these guys have a little bit of an obsession with theobromas. We got to have a masterclass last time. We also had 2 desserts, which had tons of different variations of theobromas as well. Here is our last ever preparation of theobromas as a dessert here in Peru. The outside of the cacao fruit, the mucilage, is really nice and fruity, but it contrasts super well with that pure sort of chocolatey flavor underneath. That's a delicious one. We also have like these spaghetti noodles of cacao. That's just like a chocolate mousse, has a bit of tanginess, a bit of fruitiness underneath as well. Oh yeah. And then we also have a drink, which is actually warm. It's like a lighter version of a hot chocolate. It's a bit on the more refreshing side, surprisingly, for something that's based off of cacao. I'm just always astonished at how many different ways they're able to use this over and over and over again. Doesn't matter what restaurant, you're always gonna get a ton of different variations of theobromas. I mean, that meal is unreal. The fact that they want you to get the context behind what they're doing by doing some of these immersions to really understand their land is just such a special experience that you literally cannot get anywhere else. The fact that everyone has been so open with their time, with their generosity, with their knowledge, and of course, with the amazing food, this trip really solidified for me what makes Peru so special, and I hope for you guys as well. This has been an incredible experience. If you haven't seen that other video, make sure you go check it out. But otherwise, hopefully you've learned as much as I did, and I'll see you later.